setup. Keith, could you, there's a switch on the line that says front, on the light switch. What? Yeah, because I just want to get these. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
He's done this before.
Let's talk about, what do you think I'm going to say? Anybody?
Life. Life.
Life?
The Vikings.
Viking?
Thursday.
That promotion.
Pathways.
Oh, no.
Praise God.
Oh. Let's talk about that. A little bit of a sensitive subject, perhaps, maybe even taboo. Something that people tend to avoid, maybe. I happen to think about death quite a bit. I don't even know, maybe that's normal. Maybe all of us do. Well, of course, most of us are very busy living our lives. With family, work, hobbies, and Toastmasters gets its own bullet point for you guys. Well, here's some pictures from my recent life. These are very recent. I've got some granddaughters. A couple of my daughters are here. My brother and sisters, in-laws, my friend Mary Ann. Cool, huh?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm procrastinating on getting to the subject. Procrastination is what we do. We don't usually want to think about our own mortality. Death happens to other people. And of course, it's very natural and normal to think this way. Here's a brutal truth. Most of us do not know how or when we will die. So knowing this, obviously we're not going to avoid it, but knowing how or when, can we plan for a good death? Can we do any planning? Well, actually, I'm going to talk today about a few things having to do with planning and end-of-life options. So you can have an advance directive. So what this is, some of you may be familiar with this, but this is in the event that you are in your dying days, and you're dying, you cannot communicate. And when you cannot communicate, you cannot tell your caregivers how to handle your death. So this is only in certain situations, of course. 1 out of 3 adults, elderly people, will develop dementia. So in the case of dementia, brain damage, coma, things like that, where you cannot communicate, you may be in a situation where you're still alive and dying, perhaps, but you cannot communicate your wishes. In today's medical world, there are many ways to extend life or delay death. And if your wishes aren't communicated, the default usually is to keep you alive on machines or whatever. So if you ever get into this situation, this is where an advance directive comes into play and can be very useful. So I encourage you to look into this. The resources are very, very clear and easy. Go on the internet to search for this. You can get forms, and there's directions on how to do this. So this is just something to think about. And there's another situation here I want to talk to you about. What if you are dying and want to avoid a torturous death? Wow, that's a weird question. But I want to tell you about what this applies to. So this young woman is named Brittany Maynard. So about 5 years ago, she was diagnosed with brain cancer. And at first, the doctors told her she had between 3 and 10 years to live. And then a couple weeks later, they told her, no, this is more aggressive. You have less than a year to live. Now, she was very young, of course, and as they communicated what was going on, the doctors told her what she could expect. And what she could expect were seizures, headaches, nausea and vomiting, strokes, loss of hearing and eyesight, loss of mobility, loss of consciousness, and then eventually death. So this is what she had to look forward to. And she was scared. And she was scared for herself, and she was scared for her family. So she lived in California, and she wondered if there's any other option for her, rather than to, I mean, she knew she was going to die, that was for sure. But all this other stuff for herself and her family to suffer through, she wondered if there was an option. And as it turns out, there is. And it's called medical aid in dying. And what medical aid in dying is it allows terminally ill adults to request and receive a prescription for medication that they can take themselves when they're ready to bring about a peaceful death. Now, Brittany lived in California, and it was not legal there at the time. So that she actually moved to Oregon, where it was legal, which was, a big deal for her to establish residency while she was ill like this, and her family. And she eventually did qualify for medical aid in dying in Oregon, and she did die a more peaceful death as a result. So there's qualifications. You must be mentally capable, you must be able to self-ingest, and you must have 2 doctors at least, review and make sure that you are definitely dying and that you qualify for this medical aid in dying treatment. This is my friend Mary Ann. Mary Ann has stage 4 ovarian cancer, and she's had it for a few years now. And Mary Ann is very passionate about medical aid in dying. In fact, you might have even seen her on the news in September. In September, this issue was discussed in the Minnesota legislature, and eventually, she hopes this will be legal in Minnesota. It will probably be too late for her. And it's now legal in 9 states and Washington, D.C. So for many people, the option simply brings them some peace, that they have this option. So I hope I've introduced medical aid in dying to you and brought some awareness to this issue. It will be discussed in Minnesota in the coming years, and it will be just something that will be more and more an issue, and it could be an issue for you or your loved ones, possibly. And I wish you all the best of health and a great life, and thank you for listening.